Okay, I'd like to demonstrate another part of the sprayer calibration calculator app, and that is nozzle speed. And you might look at nozzle speed and think that's just a little bit strange, how fast a nozzle travels. What it's designed to do is help you calculate the maximum and minimum speeds at which a nozzle should be operated. Many times applicators use an automatic flow control system to maintain the gallons per acre while they're making speed changes during the application, and they don't realize that they actually exceed or drop below the minimum and maximum operating pressures for that nozzle. And of course, if we go above that maximum pressure, we have a dramatically increased risk of drift. And if we drop below that minimum pressure, we start to lose our nozzle spray pattern, we lose nozzle pattern overlap, we could have a poor application. So how this part of the app works is, first thing we enter in is our nozzle spacing. So for our example, our nozzles were 20 inches apart. I'm going to go back to the example we used for our ground application. And our target GPA was 10 gallons per acre. So we have 20 inches between our nozzles and we're applying at 10 gallons per acre. Now if you remember from our early example, we had selected the TT11004 for our nozzle. We were going to operate it at 40 psi in order to get that flow rate we needed of 0.4 gallons per minute. In order to finish this off now, what I'm going to need to find is the gallons per minute at the minimum operating pressure for that nozzle and the gallons per minute for the maximum operating pressure for that nozzle. So I'm going to have to go back to the nozzle catalog, and I'm not looking for the flow rates that I initially wanted. I'm looking for the minimum flow, or the flow rate at the minimum pressure and the flow rate at the maximum pressure. Going back to this page here, we see that I selected earlier the TT11004. I see that the minimum pressure is 15 psi. So at a pressure of 15 psi, this nozzle outputs 0.24 gallons per minute. Its maximum pressure is 90 psi. That's a flow rate of 0.6 gallons per minute. The gallon per minute flow rate at our minimum operating pressure, and again, if I get confused, I want to know what this means, I just tap on it. It says GPM minimum operating pressure. That's the nozzle flow rate from your nozzle in gallons per minute at its minimum operating pressure. So the minimum pressure for our nozzle was 15 psi, and at that pressure it had a flow rate of 0.24 gallons per minute. Next one is GPM, the maximum operating pressure, the flow rate in gallons per minute at the maximum operating pressure. And for our nozzle, the maximum operating pressure was 90 psi, and the flow rate at that pressure was 0.6 gallons per minute. So I've entered in the 20-inch nozzle spacing, that target application rate of 10 gallons per acre. The flow rate in gallons per minute at its minimum pressure is 0.24 gallon per minute. The gallon per minute flow rate at its maximum operating pressure is 0.6 gallons per minute. And what the app has calculated then is the minimum and maximum speed. If I drop below 7.13 miles per hour, then the pressure on that nozzle will fall below that minimum 15 psi. If I operate the sprayer at a speed above 17.8 miles per hour, the pressure on that nozzle would exceed the maximum operating pressure of 90 psi, so that I know that when I'm using this nozzle to apply 10 gallons per acre with an automatic flow control system, I need to keep the speed between 7 and 17, almost 18 miles per hour in order to stay within the pressure operating limit of that nozzle.